is a spiritual deity. Freedom and liberty and justice shall fight for you. When you fight for freedom with all your soul, take it from me. This is Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB, the voice of the nation, the voice.
And here is a special announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile. This is BCB.
The Ohanaeze Ndigbo presidency was zoned to River State because there are Igbos in River State. There are Igbos in Delta State and parts of Kogi too. However, it is only those who identify as Igbo, in whichever part they are domiciled, are indeed Igbo, and should, in my opinion, partake in all the benefits and responsibilities of being Igbo. Anyone who willfully chooses and declares that he or she is not Igbo should not and should never be forced to be Igbo, because you are what you say you are. Our kith and kin in Ikwere will always be our kith and kin. Nature had made it so, and it will remain so. But if, for any reason, some choose to be identified as non-Igbos, then so be it. If a person like Wike or Chibika Mechi, for some political reasons, say they are not Igbo, then who are we to say they are Igbo? Looking at the year 2024 in retrospect, the sheer amount of loss of innocent lives in Igbo land, especially in this 2004, reached unacceptable proportions. We now know what it was that caused the huge amount of loss of lives. We now know that it's not only the activities of rogue Biafra agitators, funded by criminal elements in Finland and other places in diaspora, that contributed to the killings. We must say that evidence shows that even their activities, as criminal as they are, is insignificant when compared to the gruesome murder of our people, disappearing of our people, especially young people, by various arms of the Nigerian security operatives, the army, the police, the DSS, civil defense, and others, the so-called state actors. The Inter-Society for Human Rights report, Ocean of Innocent Blood Flowing in the East, which came out in December 2024, is a catalogue of the armed state actor and armed non-state actor atrocities in the East since August 2015, during which the Nigerian security forces unlawfully killed over 30,000 defenseless civilians, including the abducted and the disappeared, tortured and bodily lacerated tens of thousands, burned down over 6,000 civilian homes, raided 300 defenseless Igbo communities, sacked their 180,000 inhabitants, and frightened and forced over 1 million others to flee their homes. During this time, government-linked and non-government-linked armed non-state actors killed over 14,500 defenseless civilians, abducted over 65,000 others, and forced over 55,000 of them to pay ransoms, estimated at over 500 billion. An extra 50 billion realized from sold Millennium cars seized from the abducted victims, and burned down civilian properties valued at over 60 billion, and aided by biased Nigerian security forces to influx and proliferate estimated 2.7 million illicit small arms and light weapons across eastern Nigeria. The Inter-Society Report, the Special Report, further catalogued and exposed massive arbitrary arrests, perpetual detentions arising from uninvestigated, untriable phantom allegations, kangaroo arraignments, late-night abduction, and face bagging of unarmed Igbo civilians to secret military detention facilities in northern Nigeria and other places, tortured and bodily lacerations, open killings, secret extra-legal and extrajudicial executions, innumerable cases of enforced disappearances, and the victims' dead bodies, criminal interments, perpetual concealment of the arrested and abducted civilians' whereabouts, and denial of access to their families, lawyers, and physicians. Invasion and wanton destruction of civilian dwelling houses, indiscriminate resort to false labeling, mass criminalization, class stigmatization, ethno-religious profiling, hate, and discriminatory policing and soldiering, selective and discriminatory law enforcement and their operations, flagrant resort to prosecutorial vindictiveness and hearsay conclusions, unchecked and untamed military and police roadblocks and barrack extortions, and other corrupt practices, including monetization and commercialization of criminal investigations and prosecutions, and criminal detentions and controls, among others, all of which had arisen from the military siege and terror in eastern Nigeria, Biafra land, from August 30, 2015. All these being done under the guise or pretext of IPOB, ESN, and Biafra agitation. It is also part of the Inter-Society's report finding that 1 out of every 15 civilians accused of being seriously involved in Biafra, ESN, IPOB in Southeast, 14 out of that 15 are most likely to be innocent or falsely labeled. Note that no law in Nigeria or any part thereof permits security personnel or any of them to kill unarmed civilians under the use of force, force rule, and proportionality of same. Out of every 15 citizens arbitrarily arrested and detained without trial in connection with Biafra, ESN, or IPOB. Spurious charges. 14 are most likely, 14 out of the 15 are most likely to have been arbitrarily arrested and detained outside the law without trial. out of every 15 persons killed in the open by military or police crack squads in connection with Biafra, IPOB or ESN, 13 out of that 15 are most likely to be defenseless and unarmed. Out of every 15 unarmed civilians arrested alive, detained and tortured, or starved to death in detention above the same thing, Biafra, ESN, or IPOB, the same number, 15 out of 15, are most likely to be defenseless, innocent, and unarmed. Out of every 15 unarmed civilians abducted outside their family knowledge, an official records by soldiers or military personnel over Biafra, IPOB, or ESN, 14 out of those 15 are most likely not going to come back alive. And if arrested by DSS and their likes, 10 run the very high risk of being tortured and killed in custody. Out of every 15 unarmed civilians arrested by police crack squads over the above, 7 run the high risk of not returning to their families alive. Out of every 15 civilian houses or homes burned down or wantonly destroyed by military personnel or police crack squads, the same number, 15 out of 15, are most likely not linked to military necessity. Out of every 15 criminal allegations, such as involvement in ESN, Biafra, and IPOB, leveled against members of indigenous Southeast and Igbo South civilian population, 14 out of the 15 most likely do not have anything in connection with the so-called ESN, Biafra, IPOB, or linked to military matters or necessity. All the above is in addition to the fact that 95% of police or military or spy police issued security intelligence information and law enforcement operations reports in the Southeast and the South-South are highly questionable and most likely to be concocted, twisted, or falsified. We hereby call on the United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial, summary, or arbitrary executions, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on torture and other cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Religious Freedom, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Defenders, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights of the Internally Displaced People, United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Arrest and Detention, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Adequate Housing, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Basic Principles of Justice and Victims of Crime and Abuse of Office, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Trafficking in Persons, the United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, New York, United States, and the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, to urgently intervene, investigate, and identify and hold armed state actors and armed non-state actors, perpetrators involved, accountable, and sanction those public office holders aiding, abetting, and sponsoring them appropriately. We also urge the incoming Trump administration in the United States to adopt the reports as a working document on the assessment of Nigeria's human rights record and the United States' future international development partnership with the government of Nigeria. The incoming Trump administration is particularly called upon to ensure that the government of Nigeria is compelled to respect international freedom of worship and belief, or risk being enlisted in the country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act, 1998. In line with the Inter-Society's 76 recommendations contained in its special report, we are calling on the Nigerians' international development partners, including member states of EU, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada, to critically study the reports and have them reflected in future development and defense, security and safety reports, or aids, as well as supports for promotion of democracy, rule of law, human rights, and humanitarian assistance to government of Nigeria, and ensure that such support or aids are not channeled into instruments of violence or state terror and persecution against defenseless members of the Eastern civilian population and their properties, particularly on the grounds of faith, religion, and ethnicity. They are further called upon to particularly ensure that such development assistance and human rights and humanitarian support amounting to billions of dollars yearly are not channeled into extrajudicial killing, abductions, torture, and other cruel treatments, enforced disappearances, civilian house burning, false labeling, class criminalization, ethno-religious profiling and persecution, prosecutorial vindictiveness and hearsay conclusions, and others targeted at defenseless Eastern civilian population and their defenseless properties. The government of Nigeria shall be compelled to frontally address pandemic and endemic corruption in the country's security sector and digitalize law enforcement operations, including preventative, detective, investigative policing, and criminal detection, all of which have become the modern trend around the world. It must further be noted that digital policing and security has become the speediest way by which struggling countries have leveled up with advanced countries, because it is quantitative, qualitative, cheaper, available, less corrupt, human rights and rule of law friendly, and importable and exportable. Our right to self-determination is not questionable. Our struggle for freedom and liberty, within which an environment of economic development is ensured, will remain non-violent. We therefore urge the very few elements who have used the name of the struggle for the liberation of Biafra as a pretext to violence, to desist from doing such henceforth, and embrace internationally accepted methodologies of negotiations, of diplomacy, and of democracy. Above all, that we may look inwards and embrace other strategies aimed at human capital development and community development and cohesion, within Biafra land, and through which we would develop and grow and establish our communities and our nation as a shining light, as that hill that is, as that building that is set on a hill which can never be hidden. Our dream and our goals are noble, and we have the right to establish them for us, for our children, and for generations to come. God bless you, and God bless our nation, Biafra.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra.
This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, bringing you the news headlines for the week. In the news this week, IPOB's prescription, ethnic discrimination against Igbo Nation, Nnamdi Kanu. Release Nnamdi Kanu, consider political solution for Southeast security crisis, ex-DSS director to Tinubu. Imo, Uzodinma's 5 years characterized by terror, killings, corruption, PDP alleges. Stay tuned for details to follow shortly. From the Tribune Online, and this was a news reported on January 17th, 2025. IPOB's prescription, ethnic discrimination against Igbo Nation, claims Nnamdi Kanu. The detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, has said that the prescription of the group is tantamount to ethnic discrimination against the Igbos in the southeast region of the country. Addressing a world press conference in Abuja on Thursday, Kanu's special counsel, Aloy Ejimako, said the Arawa Youth Forum of the Hausa Fulani ethnic stock, the Odua People's Congress of the Yoruba Nation, and the Niger Delta Avengers of the Ijaw Nation, and the Miyetti Allah, that were not prescribed by the federal government, showed discrimination against the Igbos. He alleged that the action of the federal government in prescribing IPOB was driven by ethnic consideration against the Igbo Nation. According to Nnamdi Kanu, through his legal team, the questionable administrative action to prescribe IPOB and declare it a terrorist group was preceded by the infamous public declaration made by the Southeast governors prescribing IPOB on September 17, 2017. From the Daily Post, reported on January 16, 2025, release Nnamdi Kanu, consider political solution for Southeast security crisis, ex-DSS director to Tinubu. A former director of the Department of State Services, DSS, Mike Ejiofor, on Thursday urged President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to to unconditionally release Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. Ejiofor urged Tinubu's administration to consider a political solution to resolve the insecurity challenges across the southeast. Speaking on Arise TV's morning show, the former DSS director called for the prioritization of security challenges in Nigeria. He lamented that unknown gunmen killing innocent people in the southeast claims to be fighting for Kanu. According to Ejiofor, we should prioritize the issue of our security challenges. There are some that are political, while others require kinetic and non-kinetic approaches. For instance, we have achieved a lot in the south, in the northeast, until recently, when we started having isolated cases. Looking at the northeast, where you have the issue of Lukarawa, and after their initial appearance, much has not been heard from Lukarawa, and that is because of the activities of both intelligence and security forces. When you come to the southeast, I think the government should take the initiative to find a political solution to the issue in the southeast, especially with regards to the unknown gunmen and Nnamdi Kanu. I will strongly appeal to the government to use this opportunity to unconditionally release Kanu and let us see, because people who are killing innocent people are claiming to be fighting for Kanu, and he has condemned these actions. He has spoken out against the sit at home and said he is not in support of it. How can you be fighting for people and at the same time destroy their economy and their means of livelihood? Imo Uzodimma's 5 years characterized by terror, killings, corruption, PDP alleges, and this was a news reported in the Daily Post on January 16th, 2025. As Governor Hope Uzodimma marked his 5 years anniversary in office, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Imo State chapter, has described his administration as a big disappointment to the people of the state. It alleges that his leadership was characterized by terror, killing, and corruption. The PDP, in a press statement issued by its publicity secretary, Lancelot Obiako, stated that 5 years of Uzodimma's administrations were allegedly characterized by poor administrative policies, economic deficiency, without any glimpse of hope. The PDP spokesman noted that after 5 years in office, there is agonizingly nothing to be proud of in Uzodimma's administration. Even the blind can see that the governor and his team have failed to measure up in all indices of governance and should adopt an apologetic rather than a celebratory posture for leading the state to the precipice. First, the government has failed in its core responsibility of protecting lives and property. Under the watch of Uzodimma's APC-led administration, arsonists, gunmen, kidnappers, and organ harvesters have prowled and run riot like never before, leading to several lots of avoidable deaths of innocent civilians and security operatives, as well as destruction and loss of properties worth hundreds of billions, including private residences. The cases are too numerous to list, Obiaku alleged. He went further, stating that it was unfortunate that the hoodlums had overrun large parts of the 27 local governments in the states, leaving throes of wailing and woes, with many people abandoning their homes for fear of unknown gunmen. Most indigents of the local governments in Imo State fled their native homes and became IDPs in their own states. The few remaining in some parts of the local government areas live in fear and under the dictates of gunmen and non-state actors who are now more or less the de facto leaders of these areas, the PDP spokesperson alleges. In the area of infrastructure, the opposition party further alleged that the Imo roads were in what he described as sorry states and unarguably the worst in present-day Nigeria. Obiaku pointed out that Uzodinma had failed to address 98% of impassable roads in rural and urban areas, not excluding public school buildings, which he stated remained dilapidated as they lacked basic facilities. He observed that Uzodinma's administration stands as the worst in the area of commerce and ease of doing business, maintaining that the business environment has been adversely impacted by perceived insecurity and government's unwillingness to regulate taxes, leaving business owners grumbling due to multiple taxation. Despite this ugly trend, the state has maintained an abysmal 26 to 36 ranking in internally generated revenue under Uzodinma's watch, and ranked 32nd in 2004 fiscal performance ranking according to budget. Additionally, the state generated the lowest VAT revenue in the entire federation in 2024, with a paltry 235.41 million naira, almost half of what the second worst performing state, Zamfara, generated, 432.8 million, and a mere 0.2% of what Lagos generated, he said. In terms of transparency, accountability, and rule of law, the opposition party accused Uzodinma of reducing governance to what it termed a one-man show, and allegedly maintained a secretive approach in managing the state's resources. This is a governor who has spent 89% of his tenure in Abuja, Lagos, and other parts of the country and beyond. He merely returns to sign off on checks and engage in dance parties. How can one explain that the governor has refused to appoint a chief judge since November 16, 2024, when the office became vacant? Today, cases are not being assigned because only the chief judge can do so. This is just one out of many other functions only a chief judge can perform. The effect of this on the Imo judicial system can only be imagined, he lamented. The PDP also accused Uzodinma of going after those he perceived as critics of his administration and alleged failure to account for over 520 billion local government fund for the years under review. The party frowned at what it described as the government's poor approach to workers' welfare and handling of pension schemes. And that brings an end to our news review of the week. This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, saying thank you for listening and goodbye, friends.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Give us the strength to